Ever had one of those moments, where you thought you had something valuable and then poof, it just
Oh,
vanishes?
no, yeah.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into a situation that I think is probably on a lot of minds in the Pi Network community, and that is disappearing Pi coins.
Yes, that's right. A very hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, so this deep dive is all about understanding, why these Pi coins might be disappearing from accounts. And to help us with that, we're looking at this post that it's called Pi Network Disappearing Coins. And it's from the Pi Network Africa community. So they're really seeing firsthand what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great source to sort of gauge what the temperature is out there and what people are thinking.
Right, because what your questions are telling us is that you're looking for clarity. Like you want to understand what's going on. You don't just want to panic, right?
Exactly.
So our mission today is to cut through all the noise and give you the straight facts about why these coins might be disappearing, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. All right, so let's jump right in then. So the big mystery, right? The central question is, why are so many Pi Network users seeing their coin balances, shrink or even completely vanish?
Yeah. And I think it's understandable that, your first thought if you're seeing this happen is you're being robbed.
Oh,
You're
absolutely.
being hacked.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say that you're not alone if you're feeling this way. This is a very common sentiment in the community.
And thankfully, the post we're looking at, they address this fear right away. They actually say that your coins aren't necessarily being stolen. So that's, somewhat comforting, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely a relief to know that there are other potential explanations rather than just assuming the worst.
Right. But they do say not necessarily stolen. So we can't rule that out entirely, right?
Well, exactly. We always have to be mindful of the fact that there are bad actors out there in any digital space.
Right.
But what our source is saying is that the main reasons for these disappearing coins seem to be connected to Pi Network's own efforts to, keep the network strong and trustworthy.
Right. So Pi Network is basically doing some house cleaning behind the scenes.
Yeah, kind of like making sure everything is in order, tightening things up.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into those legitimate reasons then, the why behind the disappearing coins.
Okay.
And the first big one that the post highlights is KYC adjustments, especially since the mainnet launched back on February 2025.
Right.
So can you shed a little light on how that's all tied together?
Sure. So, after the mainnet went live, one of the big things that Pi Network has been focusing on is verifying the identities of its users, through that KYC process, know your customer.
Right.
And what we're seeing, and what the source very clearly points out, is that unverified accounts are having coins deducted.
Oh.
And this is largely because, Pi Network is really trying to weed out any coins that they think were mined from like fake accounts or duplicate accounts that are, associated with a profile that hasn't been KYC'd.
So they're basically trying to make sure that everyone on the network is a real person. It's
Exactly.
not a bot, not someone with multiple accounts.
That's right. That's all about making sure the network is made up of genuine users.
So if you've been putting off that KYC process,
Yeah,
that's probably why you're seeing a dip in your balance.
it's a very likely explanation.
Okay, what's the next big reason?
So the next big reason that they talk about is what they call system corrections. And this basically means that Pi Network is actively removing coins from users who have been inactive for a long time,
Okay.
or users who've been breaking the rules of the network.
What kind of rules are we talking about?
Well, the source specifically mentions things like bot mining as an example.
Hmm. Right.
So it's not just enough to be a real person. You got to be playing by the rules, too.
Right. So you got to be active and you got to be following the terms of service.
Exactly.
Mm.
And it seems like this whole system corrections thing really started ramping up after the enclosed mainnet back in December 2021.
So if you were maybe, using some shady methods, or if you just kind of abandoned the app for a few months, that could be why some of your coins are gone.
Yeah, it definitely seems like Pi Network is getting serious about maintaining a healthy ecosystem.
It sounds like it. All right, so this next reason, this one offers a little bit of hope, maybe.
Okay.
The post mentions wallet sync issues that can cause like temporary display errors.
Right.
What's going on there?
So this one is more likely to be a technical glitch
Okay.
than an actual loss of your Pi.
Okay.
So sometimes the app can just have, a little bit of a hiccup,
Right.
and it might show you the wrong balance or an outdated balance.
Right.
So the important thing to remember here is that your coins might not actually gone hell.
Okay.
The app just might not be showing you the right information at that moment.
So it's kind of like when your bank app glitches out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a temporary thing. It'll usually sort itself out.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last legitimate reason that the post talks about is the pre-mainnet purge. Which is related to missed migration.
Yeah,
So this takes us back to the early days of Pi Network,
it
right?
does for the people who were mining back in the 2019 to 2021 period.
Yeah.
Not all of those coins automatically carried over to the main net.
Oh, okay.
It was really important to properly migrate those coins to your mainnet wallet.
So if you were an early miner and you didn't do that,
Yeah,
then those coins might not be visible now.
exactly. You had to take that extra step to make sure your early earnings were brought over to the new system.
Okay, so now that we understand sort of the why behind these disappearing coins, let's get into how is the system actually working that's leading to these adjustments?
Okay.
So starting with that first reason, KYC enforcement, after the mainnet went live.
Right. Well, the source is very clear on this point that only KYC verified coins are considered safe in the long run.
Okay.
So if you haven't completed KYC, those coins could be removed.
Right. It's not just a suggestion, it's like a requirement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about making sure that the network is legitimate.
Okay, so KYC is non-negotiable.
It seems that way.
All right, what about the inactive account policy? How does that work?
Well, basically what they're doing is they're trying to discourage people from just creating an account and then forgetting about it.
Right.
So if your account is inactive for a long time,
Hmm.
they might reduce your balance.
So they're basically saying you got to be an active participant.
Exactly. Use it or lose it kind of thing.
All right, now what about those technical glitches, the wallet sync issues? What's causing those?
Well, it all comes down to the complexity of, updating the app
Right?
and making sure that the information it's displaying is in sync with the blockchain.
Okay.
So during those updates, or if there's like a lot of traffic on the network, things can get a little wonky,
Right.
and the balance you see in your app might not be totally accurate.
Okay, and then for those early miners who maybe missed that migration step, what was it that they were supposed to do and why is it causing problems now?
So basically, they were supposed to link their old mining account to their new Pi wallet on the mainnet. And this usually involved, confirming their wallet address and following some instructions in the app.
Right.
But if they didn't do that, those coins basically got left behind.
Oh, wow.
They were never transferred over to the new system.
The Post uses this really great analogy. It says, think of it like a filter pie is weeding out the weak to make the network stronger.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Good one, right?
It really gets the point across that these measures might seem annoying to some people,
Yeah.
but they're ultimately meant to benefit the entire network.
Right. So it's like short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So what can our listeners do if they're seeing this happen or if they want to prevent it from happening?
Well, the first thing, and I think the most important thing, is to complete your KYC.
Okay. What's the best way to do that?
So you just need to open your Pi Network app
Mhm.
and look for the KYC section.
All right.
It's usually pretty easy to find. And then just follow the instructions, submit your ID, take a selfie, all that good stuff.
Right. And the Post really emphasizes that verified pioneers are a lot less likely to have these issues.
Yeah, it's definitely a key step in protecting your Pi.
So if you haven't done it yet, do it now.
Absolutely.
All right. What else can people do?
Well, another really simple thing is to just stay active in the app.
Okay.
Log in every day, tap the Mine button,
Okay.
just to show the network that you're an active user.
Right. Just a little daily check-in.
Exactly. It
Wow.
doesn't take much effort.
Okay. Now, what about those wallet sync issues? What if someone's balance just looks wrong?
So the first thing you can try is to force a refresh in the app.
Oh, okay.
Usually there's a button or a gesture you can use to do that.
Right.
If that doesn't work, then you can try reinstalling the app.
Okay.
But before you do that, make sure you've got your recovery phrase backed up.
Yeah. That's super important.
Super important. That's like the key to your wallet, so don't lose it.
Okay. And what about the people who maybe missed that migration step from the early days?
Well, the best thing to do is to check your Pi wallet and see if those coins have already been migrated.
Okay.
There might be some prompts in the app that you can still follow,
Right.
but if it's been too long, there might not be much you can do.
Okay.
So it's definitely better to do it sooner rather than later.
All right. So let's zoom out a little bit. What does all of this mean for people who are mining Pi today? What does it mean for the future of the network?
Well, I think all of this is a sign that Pi Network is growing up.
Okay.
They're getting serious about becoming a legitimate digital currency.
Right.
The source actually mentions that they have over 65 million active users now.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
It's a huge community.
Yeah.
And as they're moving towards getting listed on exchanges,
Okay.
they're having to put these stricter rules in place.
Right. They got to make sure everything is above board.
Exactly. They want to build trust and legitimacy.
Okay. So seeing your Pi balance go down might be a bit of a shock in the moment,
Yeah.
but it's all part of a bigger plan.
It is. It's about the long-term health of the network.
And the post does make a point of saying that these coins aren't necessarily gone forever
That's right.
if users take the right steps.
Exactly.
So KYC, stay active, all of that.
Yep, those are the key things to focus on.
Okay, well, this has been a really informative deep dive, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just to recap, the main reason for these disappearing Pi coins are KYC enforcement system corrections for inactive accounts, those wallet sync issues, and any missed migrations from the early days.
That's right.
And the most important actions you can take are complete your KYC, stay active, check your wallet sync, and make sure your migration is all squared away.
Absolutely.
So as Pi Network, continues to grow and evolve, all of these measures are really designed to build a stronger, more trustworthy network.
Yeah, it's all about building a solid foundation.
So what other steps do you think Pi Network needs to take to, really succeed in the long run? And what role can the Pi community play in making that happen?
That's a great question, and I think it's one that the entire community needs to be thinking about as Pi Network continues on its journey.